Welcome everyone to Perfect Read episode 8. We took a couple weeks break. Obviously, we had a lot going on and we were at all different parts of the world, but we have finally returned everyone in their relative places, I would assume. Big time. I'm sure you'll be back over here on the Eastern Hemisphere soon enough. But London, Masters London just ended. We had one of us actually be there for most of it, two of us sleep through most of it. But we have caught up to it now. And of course, we had an absolute banger of a finish. So first of all, it's been a little bit. Komodo, how have you been?
I've been good. I've been like sleepy as well, if you want to put it that way too. Settling myself into a lot of normie things currently, and I guess added by the fact that London is in a really bad time zone for Australians. So a lot of it is like catching up after the fact and stuff, which you wake up and you see the scores and you either wake up like happy or you wake up and you're questioning things. I was kind of more on the side of questioning things. So
Yeah?
it was a very interesting few weeks.
Okay, okay. Have you also been losing sleep over the World Cup at all, or just Masters London? Just okay.
No,
Not
I'm not a
interested in
soccer
that.
person.
Okay. We can tell because you say soccer. That's how we
Yeah.
know. You're Australian.
We have
and you
our
say
own
soccer.
football in Australia.
Oh, that's
so...
true. Yeah. Okay.
Now that's the weirdest sport of all time. That's
Is it? Is it? Wait. Is
it's-
it different?
They
it's
play it in an oval. The field is an oval.
All right, this is a
Every-
tangent. So yeah,
everything
it's an
about it is
oval.
mad.
There's very quickly. There's a lot of players on the field. It's an oval. There's 4 posts. If you kick it between the middle posts, you get 6 points. If you kick it between either of the outer side posts, you get 1 point. If you hit the inside post, it's a point. If you hit the outside post, it's on the full, and the other team gets a free kick. There's a lot of rules. It's
Okay.
very popular here.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very popular.
Oh, wow. It's
And
popular.
It's,
Okay.
it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's like
Oh,
a
yeah.
rugby-shaped ball, and they have
Yeah,
to
correct.
dribble it like a basketball. They have to bounce.
Yeah, they bounce
You have
it
to
as they're
bounce- wait,
running.
with your hand-
So,
with
so
your
it's like
hand.
I think it's 15 meters. You got to bounce it so you can run another 15 meters or so. And to pass it to your teammate,
okay.
you like handball it like this. You can't throw it. That's like illegal, and
What?
you'll turn the ball over. And
for
you
any-
kick
anyone-
the ball. You're like
For
you
anyone
kick it.
watching,
Yeah.
if you've
Aussie
never looked up
rules.
Australian football,
Yeah.
look up Aussie
That-
football, and you'll know why they're all so
we
weird down
we
there.
have a public holiday, we have a public holiday for the grand final. What do you call the
Okay.
public holidays over in the UK, Morgan?
We call them
days?
bank holidays. Bank
Yeah,
holidays.
we get
Bank
one of those
holidays.
for the
Okay,
grand
yeah.
final. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. My mind is blown. This is like the craziest explanation to a sport I've heard since I was
I'm
very
totally
first introduced to curling in college. And I learned what curling was. Now I did get into curling. I think curling is sick. So
Curling
I
is
don't
sick.
like maybe I'll get into us.
Try
Do
it.
we just call it Australian football? Is that what
We call it Aussie Rules as the nickname, but it's AFL is the actual name, Australian Football League. So
I see. I did it. I have heard that. Okay, well, okay, that was crazy. Big time. How have you been? You were
I've
down
been good.
for a lot of London, I think, right?
I was only down actually in the venue for a few days, but obviously perfect time zone for me. I'm in the country, so I watched every game, and it was really great. Honestly, it felt very special to me to have a Masters in my home country. Obviously, I wasn't a part of esports at all before Valorant, so I came up through the UK Valorant scene. So it was so great for me because so many people who I met and worked with in that scene at the very start of my career still follow Valorant, so you get a chance to see people you've not seen, or it's a good chance to catch up, and it felt very special to me to have an event in the home country, and then on top of that it was an amazing event.
Awesome. Yeah, I did hear who was it? I think it might have been Pal, but he was also talking about how basically like everyone he's ever interfaced with in esports was like there at one point at the venue, and
Yeah.
he got to catch up with them. So it is cool, especially since it hasn't been too common. I think we're seeing more and more now in the UK, but in the past, not too many big events. So so that's cool. Did you have a chance to go visit the pub as well? Yeah,
I
like
didn't.
the Valorant pub.
I
okay.
saw it, but I wasn't there in time to catch it. I wish I did, because
yeah.
Big John was there as well. Crazy.
Right. Yeah.
What a wild signing for Valorant. But yeah, honestly, I was so impressed by the event, and especially when I was there in the finals weekend, the crowd was so sick, which makes it all the more special. The venue was so cool. I got a chance to talk to all the co-streamers. I was on Sliggy's co-stream a little bit. No, that was so great.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to see how it all works behind the scenes as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I really do feel like, especially just having spent a day going and watching purely as a fan, I wasn't involved in anything else. It was a ticket I bought myself and just went down as a fan. I would recommend it to everyone. If you have a VCT event that you can get to and you're a fan of Valorant, it's so worth traveling for it. Absolutely. You'll have the best time, regardless of who's playing.
Well, they did.
Wow.
They did have you on the desk for a little bit as well with your brother, didn't
Yeah.
they? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a different time. I went down later on. Just
Yeah,
as a fan,
yeah.
but yeah.
The Swiss stage, you were there for on the disc a couple of times. Yeah. Okay. So you would recommend going
I
live
would
to an event?
heartily recommend. If you
Another-
enjoy Valorant, it's worth it.
another tangent, because personally I always say if you actually enjoy watching the game, well, maybe Riot's gonna hate me for saying this, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't go watch it. You know what I mean?
I
Like
get you.
I would watch the game at home, but I agree that it's worth at least going once for the experience, and then obviously you can kind of pick and choose. But like you said, it is special. But
Yeah,
for me, it's like the same thing with concerts. Like I would watch a concert. I would rather watch a concert at home unless it's specifically like something special.
Like I think for me, I was less caught up in like the Valorant itself and the sort of
Right.
technical side of it that I spent so many years doing, and it was much easier to get lost in the sort of
Yeah.
moment of it, the big plays of it, the fan interaction of it,
Right.
for sure. But if you think that that's appealing to you, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely checking it out at least once, especially because you never know when it's going to come back. So I think that's the other thing is that
And,
it's a special moment.
Champ Shanghai around the corner as well. If anyone hasn't seen what China has done this year with their production quality, and now they're getting champs, that is probably like if you've been on the fence about going to watch something, try go there, because I have a feeling it's gonna probably be like the biggest event we've seen.
Yeah, it should be huge,
Yeah.
and obviously, everyone that's been relatively involved in the CN scene has talked about how much interest there is, right? And you can tell when you just watch. Like the fans are there, even for all the outdoor activations. The fans are always lining up in China, so that should be good. Obviously, we'll have a long, big build up towards that as well in stage 2 with the plans and all of that. But for now, we just crowned a new Masters champion, so let's talk about that. Now, a couple weeks back, everyone probably thought, June 23rd, 24th, here we would be talking about Paper Rex on Perfect Read and how amazing they were because they were the favorites and this was their meta and the map pool was perfect. And that just isn't true. Leviatan comes out swinging for a trophy. I mean, there's so much to unpack here when it comes to Leviatan. There's obviously the gameplay, but then the story as well, because I didn't really fully realize every bit of it until the final day, and then as I was thinking about it, and then the broadcast starts, and then we're watching, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so many layers to this team, and that made it really exciting. But I mean, BigTime, let's start with you. Just what's your take on Leviatan being the latest Masters champion?
I mean, I think it's amazing. Like I was rooting for Paper Rex. Of course, I was. I wanted them to win, but like you say, when
Did
you realize
you thought EMEA was the best region, I believe.
I was forced to make this tweet. Because I said on a podcast, Global will batter XLG and it won't even be close. And they said, "What will you put on the line?" I said, "If I lose this, if Global somehow lose this game, I'll say that EMEA is the greatest to ever touch the game." And then I was forced into it. Unbelievable. They sold me out there. But I think when I look at the final, I really do. It's so special for the kids on LEV. They're the youngest team to ever do it. It's so amazing. Their stage presence was amazing. How they were as a team, you could just feel the culture. It was so fantastic. And you add on top of that the Valorant that they played. I think Owner is a fantastic coach, and he really proved himself once again. His kind of comeback story is crazy. I still remember him, when they used to have the coach booth on stage, and when he's on crew, he's standing up and shouting. It's so great. And to add on to that, they run the whole lower bracket. They got sent down there by Paper Rex, and then they upset them again in the final. It's so amazing to see, and I was so impressed by the Valorant they were playing, the mechanical skill they were able to show, and then just everything else outside of the game. I think they truly are an amazing team. They should be so proud of what they've managed to achieve, because beating Paper X is so hard, especially in the final. They have that experience, you don't, and you pull out that upset. And I think the other storyline that I thought was amazing was Spikeson was on 2G
Two game, yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah.
What an entire flip for him. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved for Paper Rex to win another trophy. I really would have. I would love for Pacific to keep that streak going. But I think if they had to lose to anyone, Lev are arguably the team who I feel like I can let them have it because I think they're just amazing kids, man. They worked so hard for that.
Mm.
Yeah. Komodo, how did you just view Lev's run overall?
It's a weird thing because like if I look at how the first round goes and I start to see a couple of the games through theirs in the lower bracket, you know, and I just think and take a step back, if we didn't have to lock in all of our predictions before this started, I probably would have locked in Leviatan winning after the XLG game. Beating
Really?
Paper Rex. That's when I started to really see them click as a unit. That's when I started to actually see King, you know, stumbling a little bit in some of the calls earlier on, but his adaptability in the mid gaming started to become so much better over the course of all of these games. Like Vitality was a good watch. The EDG blowout was absolutely like what has happened in that one too. So I was really impressed by Lev. Now like I slept through the game, so I had to watch it a little bit later on and catch up and everything as well, right? So it's like already knowing the score puts you in a different mind in watching the game as well, right? Because it's like I see that first map of Fracture and it's like, all right, 13 to do. A lot of people would think, all right, this is going to be done. But then it's like the fact that Lev don't care. Such a young team and the youngest team, they don't care that they got slapped on map number 1 and they bounce back through the rest of it. I mean, credit where credit is due. Every single person for this organization deserves a round of applause for what they can contribute to this very flexible young roster as well, mind you, because they're changing roles, they're changing agents every bloody map. They are Paper Rexing Paper Rex.
Yeah.
And they won.
Yeah, the flexibility I think was another big thing, right? It just goes to show that they were and I think Devi talked about this in the press conference of like there was something different about playing against Lev because it truly felt like they were just playing better as a team. And when you're changing roles, etc., and we aren't able to look back and be like, yeah, but that never really feels good, right? We're just accepting it. We're just like, okay, this team's good when the comps they have. Sure, the Fracture was bad, but outside of that, like they played a really good final and they played a really good tournament. So I think it was very, very good.
I think for me, I mean, I still thought Paper X were going to win even before the final, but because I watched the final Friday, so the upper bracket final, and then the lower bracket semis, and that was the day where Paper X beat EDG, but very barely. That had me stressing because that was probably the dumbest game of Valorant I've ever seen played in my entire life from them. That was crazy. And then I watched Lev smash Vitality. And you know, you were saying it was the XLG game. I think they were favored against XLG and EDG in my mind, hands down.
Oh, yeah.
But then that Vitality game, I thought Vitality were going to own them, and then they destroyed Vitality.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't even close. And you know, those on Vitality, they have those massive names in the same way Paper Rex do. So that for me was the first sign of like, oh, I think this final could actually be a real final. I still thought Paper Rex would have the experience to close it. So Les still did even better than I thought they would in them managing to win that game. But I think all signs were there, really, when you look at the build-up to it. And, you know, Paper X more than anyone know the powers of the lower bracket, of having that momentum, of playing more games. Yep. They essentially maxed out on games played. If they would have played one more in the Swiss, they would have done it. So they figured it out. They sorted themselves out in London, figured out how to play on this stage in front of this crowd. And that's how you win tournaments.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about Vitality because I was in the same boat where I still predicted Vitality for that match. You know, I was like, I mean, you never know, especially with the Final Four, but I just thought Vitality was also, you know, looking like they were getting more and more comfortable with their own style. Like they didn't fully figure out the game yet, but they found their own place. And then, like you said, Vitality got destroyed, and I remember basically saying from then on until the EDG match and then even the grand final, I was like, now I'm just confused how much of this is Lev versus how much of it is the other team losing. And not that they're throwing and making it easy for Lev, but it was, for me, it was almost hard, at least watching it live. I think it'd be different if you went back and reviewed it all separately. But to figure out, because, like, yeah, Lev was playing well, but it almost felt like they were playing too well so that the opponents didn't even have a chance to challenge it. And usually I always feel a little hesitant when that happens because I'm like, well, what happens when you do get challenged? Like, do you just crumble? Like, do you have any more ideas? You know, is it just a matter of prep? So I thought, okay, going into grand final, surely it's still Paper X. Like, they have the double map ban. Lev looks
Yeah.
better, but Paper X has been watching it. Like, it's gonna be fine. And then they get smashed map 1, and I'm like, okay, it's over. Like, it's freaking over. And then
Yeah.
Lev just. I mean, like you said, they really adapted, because I think the other storyline coming into this tournament was that this was a team that had really good like set plays and trap plays, and they
Yes.
did at the beginning of the tournament. But in the beginning of the tournament, I would say, 2 weeks back, that was kind of their only strength still, and
Yeah.
that was how they got by. And so I
Yeah.
questioned if you could adapt at all.
And
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge point of it, because when I watched their first game against Global, I was on the co-stream with Sliggy and TMV, and I hadn't watched much Lev. I think Americas is the hardest region for me to watch time zone wise.
Right.
So I'm less up to date with it. And I remember they started the game and it was on Fracture, and TMV said watch the Lev's defender half. He said every round they're going to go aggro with double duelist on one lane, and they're going to play the other side retake with breach brim. And I watched them do it 12 rounds in a row, and I was like, how can anyone lose to this team? This is the most anti-stratable team in the world. I was like, how are you getting away with this? And then they win the game against Global, and I was like, well, Global should have won that game. That was hands down. That was theirs. And then I felt like as they got more and more into the tournament, they still had those heavy strat plays. They still had those in the back pocket, but it felt like they got more adaptable as the round started to break down. They got better into that chaos, and they got really good at just like countering people's counters. They sort of knew what you'd seen, and then they already had a next step ready. I feel like this is a team that I saw grow into the tournament so much, and that's what let them win. So I was shocked. If you would have told me straight after that game, that global esports game, that this team wins the tournament, I would have slapped you in the face.
and that's part of the reason why I mentioned the XLG game as well, right? Specifically the second map on Lotus. Like, they had, and I'm really glad you brought up the Fracture, because I was going to mention it actually because of that. They know what the counters to their counters are, and they're aware of this. And time again, they start to get better on it. And it's not just like that they are purely prepping for that anti in the anti, or counter in the counter, or whichever way you want to do it. They have the perfect read on the game, and I'm putting that pun in there intentionally, because they actually do. You go back and you analyze 90% of these games, they have the right calls, the right reads, the right barrier drop plays that they need to at the moment more often than not. And then you just add the sprinkle on top of Neon doing God's work, Spike doing God's work, and Sato just being like this young freshman, essentially, like running around and standing up and getting the crowd riled up every single time. This was a hungry squad the whole time, but it's not like that they were biting off more that they can chew at any point. I feel they were still very measured where they needed to be, and I think that is something that when you've got a really young squad, it can be a little bit hard to wrangle. So I think Owner's done a fantastic job with this squad to really align them over the course of their journey, and King as well. How long have we waited for King to get his crown?
Yeah, I mean, a long time, right? It was funny seeing people remember that he is a core part of that's the Spike clip. Like, he was the guy who had to go pick up the spike and die falling off the window, and now here he is leading a team and getting that trophy and the crown. Now, I like that you mentioned the pre-barrier calls as well, because I think up until even, I would say, maybe even through the lower final, it did still feel like some of the actual like mid-rounding was a little bit slower to my liking. Like, it didn't feel as fluid, but the pre-barrier calls, the round-to-round reads seemed to get so much better. Whereas before, like, let's say, like the GE game or whatever, it was more so just, here's the playbook, this is how we play this half. Now you get into the lower bracket and you start to build up. We saw them kind of adapting to timeouts and kind of predicting what the opponent was going to do, changing up their game plans more round to round. And then eventually that gave them the time. And I almost want to say, I'd be very curious if we could ever get, whether it's through a vlog or whatever it is that they might put out from Lev's side, see really who was a big proponent of that. Because I almost imagine that the actual mid-rounding might have just been also the other players growing into it, because we started to see, I think, everyone else, not just, Spike, not just Neon, but even, Sato, even Blows, I mean, in the last map of the grand finals as well, but kind of take things into their own hands and play confidently, so that someone like King would also have more time and leisure to figure out what else they need to do, rather than having to say, hold on, everybody hold, let's figure out what we're doing for the next 10 seconds, right? It was just much
Yeah.
more fluid once it got to the grand finals.
You mentioned the Lotus there, map 5 of the grand final. I think part of that might have been accentuated by the fact that the spacing was also atrocious by Paper Rex at a lot of the time. Something that stuck in
Yeah.
my head was like them swinging one at a time against blows on that A site when he jumps on the rope and makes the most audible sounds ever.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think if we touch on the final, it wasn't a spacing problem. It was a mental problem from Paper Rex. To be honest, I think when it goes the distance in map 5, Paper Rex are a very, very good Lotus team. Everybody knows this. Lev stole their comp and beat them with it. Now, that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. And you don't beat Paper Rex in such a dominant fashion without some kind of crumble. But I mean, that's not to take anything away from Lev. Like, I really want to emphasize this, because they did everything to earn that, to earn the breakdown of Paper Rex. They put them on the back foot. They came back. They ran the lower bracket. They bounced back after that map 1. They gathered that momentum, and I feel like Paper Rex had their head down in the map 5. Don't get me wrong, I think they were making lots of mistakes, but they're not mistakes we normally see. So I think you have to give full credit to Leviathan for being able to force that out, and having such insane mental for such young players for their first time on a global stage is so hard. Like, I really wish I could stress how hard that is, because people won't get it, but it's insane what they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I think a way, and I know what people are going to say, but if you're listening, just, it isn't intended that way. It isn't intended to bring Nongshim into this, but just listen. No, hear me out. You guys are smiling. Hear me out.
I'll say it.
No, Nongshim set the record for the average age when they won Santiago just a couple months ago, right? And we were all talking about how, like, wow, okay, you know, an Ascension team climbs back in 1 year, that's all it took. They just needed one veteran to lead the way, and then all these young X-Ross comes in, just turns 18 for the year. And then Lev just does it, but even faster, right?
Yeah.
Like, Neon's like, well, I actually literally just turned 18, like, this stage. And so, but I think, again, Divide put it best when he was asked that question in the press conference, where he said, well, in Santiago, and I know he wasn't trying to take anything away, but he just said in Santiago, it felt like it was made for Nongshim, right? Like, they had the best Neon player. Francis was really good on the Yoru. They had the double map it. Like, everything came together for Nongshim, and so you get crushed 3-0. But this time, it felt like Lev was just a really good team. And obviously, the scoreline shows it as well. But, you know, while, you know, I watched the Nongshim boys, obviously, yeah, they did their part in having the mental and to, you know, battle through the tournament and whatnot. But they had a much easier run, relatively, much shorter run as well, because they had the bye going in. Lev had to freaking grind through, adapt, and evolve. And you have these youngsters being able to do that during a BO5 after starting off with a 13-2 map score. Like that, I agree with you, BigTime. I think that is a huge deal. And it's not, and it wasn't even... Yes, there were hero plays, but it didn't feel like they were just purely relying on the adrenaline. Like, it really just felt like they were, in a lot of ways, more calm than Paper Rex. Like, they almost had less to lose. And I think that's incredible. Whatever they're doing on that team to make that happen, it's impressive, because afterwards we could see it did mean a lot. So it's not like they didn't care. It's not like the emotion wasn't there. Like, surely, you know, their heart's pumping and whatnot, but they were able to handle it.
They know how to manage it so well. And from what I was hearing backstage, this was a group of guys that spent every day together, all the time. They were like, you know, also my brother was there with Foot. He was telling me they were like the only team you'd see go and eat in the lobby together. They wouldn't eat in the practice room. They'd move around as a group. There was a whole thing about them. They just sit in the lift together, going up and down in the lift and seeing who gets in. Like, I think they captured that fun. You know, they understand that they're here to play a video game, and they can embrace everything around the joy that brings, right? And I also think now, I think after what we saw in Santiago, like I said, with Nongshim and the youngest to do it, and now that's when broken again by Leviathan. I think this right now is signaling a change in the Valorant landscape of now the kids who grew up on Valorant are turning 18. No longer are we going to see the migration of CS players, of Overwatch players, of the old guard of Valorant that were playing it because it was there, that was, you know, they could play it and they could make money playing it. You're now getting a new wave of players coming in that genuinely love Valorant, that have been playing it since they first got a PC. And that, to me, means the esport will change. It will be so significant, and it's not surprising that you're seeing them lift trophies already. When you've grown up and Valorant is all you've known, you're not having to import skills from a different game, even if it's similar. There's enough differences.
Yeah.
They're learning it from the ground up, and they understand Valorant better than anyone. Like look at Neon, man.
Yeah.
Freshly turned 18, but he's been training for this for years. When was it Leviathan signed him? Years ago?
Yeah.
3 years ago?
Yeah,
a
Something like
couple
that?
years ago. Yeah.
But
Like-
it's also he gets the MVP too. Don't forget, right? It's not like he just jumped into this as well. He was like they were all kick opponents, but he was the one that is granted the honor of the MVP bracelet. We heard on his interview how much it meant for his family, right? His team, his family as well. So I think it's a really big thing. But something that I want to like further extend on what you mentioned is all the players that will come up through Valorant as Valorant being their first thing. They might not be on the scout just yet for any tier 1 kind of team, right? What happens next year? Open circuit. It's the time for these players to step into the light if they've not been given that opportunity just yet. So it is actually their time to make it theirs. So I think next year's landscape is really going to be just super interesting, super spicy to see how much change it happens. Like, are we going to see more teams that are 1 vet or 2 vets and a couple of rookies? Because so far, you look at this year, whilst Paper X has so much consistency that they've already got into champions now, that their spot is confirmed, their Achilles heel, 2 grand finals, is 1 vet and 4 rookies. Unfortunately, they are the bridesmaid again, not the bride.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's definitely signaling a generation shift, and we've talked about it. You know, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I would agree that now that it's 2 masters in a row, it's like, okay, no longer can you just write it off as experience and nerves, right? People have figured out there's enough coaching and veteran players that can now instill that upon their teammates and their players, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're noticing. And so once that goes through, like, the talent definitely shines through on the rookies for sure. So I think it's gonna be really interesting once Champs comes around to see who really is able to put it all together towards the end of the year. But we'll get back to the actual gameplay of LEV a little bit later on when we discuss overall what we thought of the meta and whatnot for the tournament. But let's focus on the grand final a little bit longer on the other side. So Paper Rex, obviously we talked a little bit about it. It seems to be a mental problem, you know, etc. But I mean, first of all, are you happy with how Paper Rex played, even though they lost?
I am. I mean, I think we speak so much about this was Paper X event to lose and all this kind of stuff, and it was, like, rightfully so. And they couldn't make it happen, but ultimately 2 second place international finishes in a row is not an easy thing to do. Even I think, unfortunately, this could happen to them again in Champs, and they've still had a great year. I think people in Valorant are a little bit biased towards, if you don't win a trophy, you're bad, and I don't think that's true. I think when we look at the Valorant they played pretty much the same Valorant that they were used to playing. I think this meta was perfect for them. I think they were able to capture a lot of the magic, especially earlier on. I think towards the EDG game is where we saw the real shift in them, where, you know, it's a razor edge with Paper X. It always is, where they push the limits, they have a lot of fun. But I want to see them do that. As annoying and as stressful as it is, that's who they are. And the moment they stop nearly throwing is the moment they'll have no fans, and it's the moment they'll be a terrible team.
That's an insane thing to say, that the moment they stop throwing is when they don't have fans.
I'm telling you, they need it. They need adversity, these guys. So I think even in the final, they played very good Valorant at points. You know, the Fracture game was really strong. I think they could have won Ascent, you know.
Yeah.
I think it was a final they played well enough to win up until the very last map, in my mind. And the last map was where it got away from them. That's the only time where I felt a little bit disappointed in them, where I sort of expected more, where I thought they'd at least go out fighting in a map 5. But it's been a long time for them, you know. They worked hard to get here. So I'm seeing a lot of negativity towards Paper X online and stuff. So I think that sort of informed what I'm saying here, where I think to hate on this team or to call them trash for finishing second twice. Bro, you know what I would have done to finish second at a Masters?
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
I would have promised my firstborn to whoever had that power to give me a second place at a Masters. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. So I think they can still hold their heads high, and they still have champs. I would
Yes,
argue they're
they're
still in a
guaranteed.
fantastic place for champs.
Oh, yeah.
They already know that they're there. They can work towards it. I don't think the meta shift will be super crazy. We need to see how the new changes will play out.
Yeah.
But
New maps,
really,
yeah.
I think they're still in a good spot. Champs is still on the cards for them. I think we won't be talking about them as super obvious favorites like we were for London, just because we've seen them lose twice now. So,
Yeah.
but they'll be fine. They're always fine. And if you're a Paper X fan, like, second place is okay. Relax.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
I think the one thing to note is you say some people are obviously being toxic about it, but imagine now, I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves, but if they do win champs, suddenly they're the greatest team of the year because they got 2 second places and a win, right? So it's like, yeah, it can really shift very quickly. Or even if they got, let's say, second place, let's say 3 times, but if it's all the different champions, I think in retrospect they would still be considered to have a very good year. Obviously, the players wouldn't want that, but you have to put it into perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, you look at what has been thrown out there towards them, like they should have won, yada yada yada. I kind of counter Morgan a little bit in the way that they played that grand final, because if I dissect it map by map and specifically half by half, there's a bit of a pattern in there as well, right? You disregard Fracture. For Split, it's competitive on the first half. Their attack, they can't get rolling whatsoever, right? You look towards Breeze, their defense, they can't get rolling, but their attack, they flip it over. Okay, you alienate that map. Ascent, it's kind of, a more balanced state. I definitely agree with you. They could have won Ascent in that one, and we would have been in a different story. Paper X would have won, right? But then you look towards Lotus, and it's another half, this time the first half, that they just can't get rolling. They give themselves no breathing room. There's some moments in that game where it just is flashbacks for me of Alex way back when, just throwing his hands up to his head, laying back in his chair, and says, we've lost. It's over. Like, we've lost this. All the way back to what, Santiago, was it? Like, it is one of those things where it's like, it sucks, but you still have to remember they got second at 2 Masters. They get to champs. Maybe we see Forsaken play the rest of the agent pool now. Who knows? And Fracture going out, does that hurt them? Okay, maybe, but they're a great Sunset team and that one coming back as well. So Pearl out, they don't like Pearl. They could have a stronger map pool coming next with Summit if they want to adopt that. Who knows?
But I mean, I do feel like your point of like, they had good halves, they had bad halves. Lev had good halves and had bad
Correct.
halves.
Yes, exactly.
They got map. They dominated a map. I think that's what made it a good final. So I don't think I can be mad about how Paper X played.
Yeah,
sure.
I think I will just say I don't know if I'm mad at how they played, and I definitely don't agree with the people that are saying like they threw or whatever. For sure not, because like BigTime said, and I've said this during my watch parties as well, like people were getting very upset, and I said, okay, but legitimately you do realize this is also half the time how they win their rounds. It's with the exact same dumb swing that they win their rounds. So it's like you can't have both. Like it comes with the package, so you're gonna have to deal with it a little bit. But one thing I did feel though is that as the final went on, and maybe it's just a matter of fatigue, and I know when their assistant coach Wendler tweeted this as well, just talking about how they're trying to figure out how to really get that championship mentality and figure out what the block is. They're not even sure yet, but maybe it's a mental thing. But it also just felt like they were kind of losing their identity as they went, right? Like, I would almost wager that in the past, they might have lost this final worse, I think. But in a more spectacular fashion at the same time. It'd be like more just going ham and just really running it down and just trying to get trades. And maybe it would turn into a bigger train wreck, but they'd have that identity. And then, sometimes, especially during Pacific Stage 1, I would say we started to see them play like really good macro. And even throughout some of this tournament, especially on maps like Breeze, where they would showcase that, hey, we know how to play this map. We understand this map better. And then in the grand final, it almost felt like they hadn't quite figured out what that balance was for themselves, so that when they were getting challenged or when Lev got the momentum, it was almost like the team was on different pages of like, well, are we going to go the W gaming route of solving this problem, or are we going to go the macro route of solving this problem? And when that identity falls through, yes, because it's Paper X and they're still good enough individually, they can still hang, they can still make it a good final. But we were talking about this before we started recording, but this is, I think, where I almost felt like it might have been a little bit bland compared to the score line, in that it felt like one team was losing their identity while Lev was for sure gaining their identity as it went on and on.
Yeah, it's an interesting state for me, the way the game is right now, that we can talk a little bit more like how the meta influences certain teams and stuff, and micro and macro. Because if I take a step back from this one, I actually think the game is kind of almost at one of its worst macro states when we look at the run and gun ability that we had at last Masters and this Masters as well. I think a lot of that chaos is being capitalized upon from a bunch of teams, where if they did have a flavor of really good macro as well, it elevates them a lot more than others have been able to. And you would kind of think that this would have been perfect for Paper Rex, even more so because of that style. But if you do add that sprinkle of macro ability to the run and gun, to the mind-numbing nonsense that we see in a couple of these rounds, I actually think that's what has a team stand out from the rest of the moment.
I will say, I don't like the take that you don't need macro. You don't need macro in this meta. I mean, I think, it's always, every meta is a joining scale.
Joining the benchwarmers and podcasters, I see, big time.
Yep. I think every meta exists on that scale of like macro is super important, and I think if you take that to its extreme, it's like you don't need to shoot all. You can whiff every bullet and you can still win if you control the game perfectly. We've not seen that, but when I think about like Astra Viper meta, things like that, it was hard to shoot your way out of problems. Now we're leaning more this way, right? I think you can shoot your way out of problems, but I think the macro that it takes to play a double duelist very effectively, it's still macro. You have to understand your comp. You have to understand how to contact around the map. You have to understand. I think knowing when to cancel is so much more important in double duelist than it is with double initiator. Understanding how to create those question marks and baiting out the valuable util, because util is even more valuable.
Yeah.
Understanding how to create those question marks. I think macro will always exist. You could play 5 duelists, but there'd be macro involved there. I don't like the take at all that it's zero macro, low skill, it's all about shooting, because I don't think it is. I watched no offense, Will, I watched Nongshim play.
Nongshim's probably, I'm such a double-edged sword for Nongshim. Like, it's both good and bad.
I watched them play Breeze, and 5-man exec A, 12 rounds in a row. Right?
Yeah.
That to me is no macro. And they beat bad teams. So that to me means, okay, sure, there's some legitimacy there, but then you play against anyone decent and they get slapped about the gap, because you can't have no macro.
I'm not saying there's no macro. I'm saying there is a lot. Like, if we're scaling like macro and I don't know, like shoot, run and gun, however you want to categorize
let's
that
say run and gun.
It probably used to be like a lot more like macro above, right? Like 2 years, 2.5 years.
2023.
Yeah. Now it's like, it's not just this, it's like even more so currently. And I'm kind of hoping that like the Initiator and the Sentinel buffs that come in patch 13 kind of maybe bring it up a little bit, because I still feel like right now, the way the game is, and I agree with you on this point, Morgan, it's macro is still important, but the ability for the shooting will solve problems as well now, where it's not just like you have to think your way out of it. You definitely can shoot your way out of it as well. It's always a difficult thing of balancing that state.
I think it's the take I had was, I agree that it's from a macro perspective. If you're someone who likes macro, you're a coach or an IGL, or you just like watching that aspect, it's definitely in one of the worst states. I don't know if it's quite the worst state, but one of the worst states. Yeah. But I'm also in the boat that, as someone who doesn't have a direct horse in the race, obviously, I would like Nongshim to win, but I'm not coaching Nongshim, I'm not a player on the team. I'm not a big fan of the complaints that come out as well, because also I'm thinking, Well, have you really fully explored everything that macro has to offer? Like,
Yeah.
even if it's, let's say it's 1585 and only 15% of the game is macro, but from a viewer's perspective, from a third person perspective, I'm only seeing 10 out of that 15% being utilized. So, like, are we really in a position to complain about it when we haven't unlocked the full 15% and then see how it feels? Now, I will also put the caveat out there for anyone that is on a team that I get it. The VCT system doesn't really condone like long-term macro prep and planning when that's not like the easier route is just find another player who just shoots better and then get them on for the stage and run through it, right? Like I get that that's the easier solution, but for a good example, I think is actually Paper X on a lot of their defensive rounds. They were still consistently one of the only teams that was very consistently pushing out for re-clears immediately to gain space on defense. And it's like, okay, so that's how you get these rotates. If the other team, like BigTime said, goes for a fake, you have to immediately push out. And yeah, you're putting your life on the line. I get it. That's where the run and gun comes in. But that is, now it's being tied into the macro. If they've cleared at double, now you can have someone rotate. Or you can even just say, let's just 5-stack the other side because we know they're not a team who's going to rotate again. So if I'm not seeing enough teams do that, I don't know if I think they're making the macro look even worse than it has to be in a sense.
Like, I think a good team to watch is, if you're one of those people who is like, oh, there's no macro, I think a good team to watch is Foot. I mean, obviously I'm biased and I know the coaches, so I spoke to them about this. But I think like that was a team that the narrative about them is that, oh, they're this really fast Turkish team. But that's entirely wrong. That's a parroted narrative that people have made up. When you watch them play, I think they understand double duelists better than everyone because they have two actual full-on duelist players. They don't have a guy who's flexing. They have two real duelists. And both of those know how to play their agents very well. So when you watch them on attack, it's so much about how much space can we take for free? How much can we contact before? And it means Yetajay, who's on that lurk, he's so aggressive with it because he knows he can put his body on the line to take space. They understand that. They understand inserting a player, rotating away, making these question marks, and it's not fast. Like, I think people think double duelist has to be fast, and don't get me wrong, it can be because you have the power to do these 5-man execs. But if you're smart about double duelist and if you want to like macro it up properly, you have to mix that in with a lot of these slower contact heavy rounds. So I don't think I don't think this state of the game is healthy if it's for a long time, but I'd be lying if I said it's not refreshing compared to what we've seen in the past. Last year we had the whole Teo meta and all this kind of stuff. For me, it's nice for me for the game to briefly dip into shoot heavy. Now, I think it should be corrected. Don't get me wrong. I think there's nerfs that need to happen, but I think it made for a very fun and enjoyable tournament. And I think the teams who could figure out this style are ultimately the teams that did the best. You know, I think you can complain about that, but you look at a team like RRQ, that's not set up for this meta. They really have two initiator players, and they struggled because they couldn't adapt to this. So I think in a game like this, you want it to cycle. You want different things to be meta all the time, and it will give different teams a chance to shine. And I feel like we've explored this side of the meta balance right now. And to be honest, I enjoyed it, but I'm very double duelist. I'm very firepower pilled. So I think when it flips back and, you know, hopefully resets to be a bit more neutral, we'll see different teams pop up again. But I think for me, it's just a different flavor of macro that isn't as obvious because it's not as, util this, let's drone this, let's recon this. And, you know, it's a lot more putting your body on the line. So you can just die and you look stupid. But there's always macro behind it for these pro teams. Macro will always exist, and it always does. The day macro doesn't exist is the day every coach gets fired. But every team has a coach because you have to understand structure.
And I think that's, for me, the real interesting predicament that teams are going to go through in the next couple of weeks before Stage 2 starts. It's going to be initiator cooldowns come like from 60 seconds to 50 seconds. You've got Sentinel buffs coming in. You've got a completely brand new map with new ideas and new flavors of agent variety that can come through for different teams. Who is going to be able to figure out the meta first and figure out a counter meta, Paper X, with their own style, right? And they take it a different way. Full sense if they want to try and do the same thing that they've been cooking up lately with their wacky comps and GE for that matter too, right? In Pacific, of course. So I'm really excited to see which way teams take it Are we still just, all right, double duelist, good, strong, we continue with this for shooting with the supporting cast of, one of each of the other three roles? Are we still leading heavily into that? Are we forced to pick up a little bit more mid-rounding strategy and put more emphasis on training material to try and level up the players for their recognition, for their VOD viewing, and a little bit more in research? Probably not. That's very time consuming, but it's always an exciting thing for me to witness, all of the different media that the teams put out around their training, around the interviews, around players' streams, and just how the vibes are in every single player and every single piece of content that they put forwards for the audience to consume. So I think going into next stage, I want to see, as we're talking about, this balance of maybe macro coming up a little bit more against the gunplay, but if it doesn't, I just hope that we still get something that the players find fun to play, and that the viewers still can enjoy. Because at the end of the day, if the viewers start to see staleness and the players start to still see, a meta that's the same for the whole year, let's call it, that's where I see a much larger problem.
Yeah, so let's then, so far now, I think we've all agreed that it's slightly different, but did you feel that London was different enough from Santiago?
I think. Oh, I think that's an interesting question, because I think it was different in the sense there was much more variety. I feel like you could play Neon Phoenix if you want. That's what Leviatan were doing, but you could also play Jet Rays. Don't get me wrong; it still existed in this double duelist, exit contact heavy scenario, but I felt like it was different enough that it wasn't Neon Yoru every single map. I think this was an improvement on the meta of Santiago, in my mind. So I think with the changes, I'm hoping that it continues to improve again. I think we didn't see agent like Yoru this tournament, realistically, outside of it's like Viper and Omen and things are always picked, but that's every single meta, right? So if you discount them, you look at more the flavor of the month ones, it was Yoru. You couldn't play a map without Yoru,
right?
Santiago, realistically, and Nongshim didn't do that. They played Neon Yoru every map. Was there one map where Danby didn't play it? I can't remember. But they had Yoru
until
map,
they needed it, and then he brought up the Neon. Yeah.
And I think that's too stale in my mind. That's too far. I liked that London was a little bit more open. I think there's still work that needs to be done, but I liked the meta of London more than I did Santiago.
Yeah, okay. I agree. I liked this meta a lot more. I think it's been one of the most versatile in terms of the selection of agents that we've actually seen across the board. Like, we technically did still see a Yoru picked up for something of Paper Rex over on Ascent with their comp, but we didn't see, Neon get completely shot into the ground. Neon is still playable to a degree. You just can't jump around like you used to be able to do, right? You got to have your boots on the floor, essentially. We still saw Teos be picked here and there. We saw a KO for Crostally as well. We still have these agent picks, niche agent picks coming through. We didn't have any of your normal ranked agents, so to speak, as well, which is kind of still an expected principle right now, Valorant. Some agents are tailored to ranked, some you won't see in comp whatsoever. So your Reyna and your Clove specifically there. Mix, if you want to throw Mix in. As well. So maybe they just stay in ranked or stay nowhere in terms of mix, because I don't even really see that be played currently. You've got Sages played in. Like, I think this agent selection balancing is always something that's very difficult in a game like this, a live service game, maps that are rotating out as well, that some teams have spoken very vocally about. We change too quick, or we don't change enough. You're never going to be able to appease everybody. But I think you would be hard pressed to find someone right now that would, in an objective speak, say that the previous meta of the Yoru Neon was better than now.
Sure.
Even probably Nongshim, would say that this is better, even if they didn't get a trophy, right? So
I think for me, I would argue it as well based on just as a fan to watch. I'm sort of the belief that you should balance more for how the game looks, for the people who watch the game are the ones who actually create an ecosystem. If no one watches, none of us have jobs. All of us go unemployed. And for the players, I get you want something that feels fun to play, but also you're paid a lot of money to do this. You can adapt. You have enough time. Figure it out. So I care more about the view, how it is as an esport. And I think in
Yep, okay.
Santiago, there were moments of it that's fun. Like a great Neon was great to watch, but I felt like a great Yoru was boring to watch. He was so untradeable with the op. At least like when a Jet takes a shot, she takes a shot and then she dashes. But she's what
Yeah.
10 meters away in the game as opposed to the other side of the map. So
Right.
if you're also running those fast regions, you can chase her down. There's a bit more back and forth. I feel like.
Yeah.
But Santiago, I didn't like watching Santiago anywhere near as much as I enjoyed
Right.
watching
Yeah.
London. And I do think that's important.
The Yoru
Yeah.
part I think is a very good point, right? Where I mean, in a lot of ways, that's kind of what I think people disliked about the chamber meta back in the day as well.
Yeah.
While the
chamber.
like, if you had an aggressive chamber, sure, like you're walking around with a headhunter like Prime Yay, and, like that looks cool. But outside of that, it's like hold an angle, boom, now you're gone. We stop for another 10 seconds until you reposition, etc. So there wasn't really that push and pull, and I think like you're saying, there's not that immediate reaction and feedback loop. Whereas whether it's a Jet or whoever else or even current chamber, you're not going that far, right? There is some sort of counterplay to it. So it feels a lot more fun, and there's a lot more action to be had from a viewer experience as well. So I agree with that. The idea of the double duelist, I mean, we talked earlier about obviously the macro as well. So I agree that I don't know if I don't think you can quantify it the same way as we did Santiago. I agree with that as well, right? I think it's definitely more varied. We saw teams, whether it's running it down, we saw teams having the duelists on either side for like fakes. I think that we had a couple more of those. But let's talk a little bit about the Neon then, because Leviatan, well, actually, before we do that, so then would you argue that Leviatan did eventually, maybe even if it's only in the grand finals, played the current meta the best? Or did they just play their game the best? Like, do you think theirs was the best solution?
I think they played their game the best. In my mind, after the Neon nerfs, she wasn't the top duelist, right? I think Phoenix is definitely the best. So I think they lent into Phoenix and they had a good Phoenix. But I also feel like Jet was in an amazing spot. Razor's still in an amazing spot. I think it's hard to say they played the meta best because the meta is more open.
Sure.
In a way. But I think the one thing they did is they understood that the Neon nerf wasn't crazy. Like it wasn't game breaking for her, and they have a very good Neon, so they used it. And I think they used the meta in a way that fits their team, and then we saw so much role flexibility, so that when they wanted that Phoenix, they could always get Saito on it. But then when they didn't need Neon to be playing that duelist, he's on the smokes, and someone else can fill it. Like they showed their adaptability, and they were able to make the meta work for them with their flexibility. In my mind, and it wasn't so it's kind of a bit of everything, but they always adapted it to what they could make work, and they could make a lot work because they're flexible.
I agree with that. I think that the flexibility of this team might even be more flexible than Paper X to a degree. Like you're looking at the ability of Forsaken bringing out the Neon, where it's like Jing is on the Raze and something is on the Yoru or the Jet. Like they're kind of still set in their competitive duelist roles, where you go over towards Lev and they're even a little bit more versatile and flexible. And you got the others that are a lot more flexible as well, right? Yes, could Envy go back in towards his Viper to some point, because it goes hand in hand, a Sova and a Viper, right? You usually see that flexibility come around. And Devi moves his roles. We'll wait to see what this looks like in the next meta for a team like Paper X with the Initiator and the Sentinel changes. That's why I bring it up for that. Will Lev get even potentially stronger? I think that's going to be a very interesting thing to witness. But I think I agree with Morgan. They definitely played their game in this meta, and such an interesting, kind of pivot for Valorant and for all the devs and stuff as well. It's like, how do you cater the agent nerfs and buffs that you're doing? Because Morgan, when you said like tailoring a meta or an audience keeps the ecosystem alive, right? You gotta keep their involvement and everything. In my head, I just immediately go, 99% of them don't even know like half of the ability names, a quarter of the ability names. Like they just want to see point and click. They want to just see shenanigans afoot, right?
I don't think I know most of the ability names. I
see
think
what I mean?
what the audience want. I think what is healthy for an esport
it's too
is
different
change.
to what the players want.
But I think the thing is, for me, an audience truly don't know what they want, and they complain about everything eventually.
Yeah, agree.
Yep.
Right? So all they want is change. So, but now it's been in a sort of gunplay era, leaning more towards that micro side of things on the needle. All it wants is a little move, and then the audience will go, even if it's 2 weeks where they just enjoy figuring it out, and then they go, "Oh, this is terrible, right? You don't know how to balance a game." But there's been very, very few times, I think, in almost any esport ever, where the fan base is entirely happy with the state of the game. To be honest, I feel like there'll always be complaints. People always have a problem, but I think Valorant does a good job. As often, like, if you look back at almost every international tournament, they pretty much have a distinct feel to them in terms of how the Valorant is played for the most part. There's different agents that are strong, different metas. People are embracing different roles. We see role swaps all the time in Valorant. So I think they do a good job of it. People will always have a problem, especially if it doesn't suit them and doesn't suit their team and doesn't suit their favorite, their favorite players. People will always have a problem. But I think as long as I think it has to be done with everyone in mind. You want a game that the pros want to play, obviously,
Sure.
but then you also want a game that is fun and engaging. And I think if balancing a game was an easy job, then we'd all be there doing it, making a lot of money at Riot. But it's hard to do. It's hard to get right. There's a lot of moving parts. So I think all you can do is the attitude I always try and have with it, and it was the same as when I was coaching, is you just have to embrace what's in front of you. You're sort of handed this game in whatever state it's in, and you go, right, well, we have to figure this out now. That's part of the puzzle, and that's part of the fun of it.
I think if I may, the way I interpret what BigTime was saying, and I think I'm kind of in between you guys, is that you do have to, obviously, at the end of the day, I think you have to care about how it looks, right? Because obviously, if it's not fun to watch, then no one will watch it. I don't know if you should revolve entirely around it, but I also agree that Valorant as a game is very clearly catered towards getting your dopamine feedback pretty immediately, right? Barriers drop in the middle of the map. You're in a fight right away. You're able to just barrel through. You've got these chase and mobility skills everywhere now. It's all about getting that immediate feedback loop, and therefore you're going to need a level of that because the people who are playing the game are used to feeling that in their game. And so you need to have some level of that. I don't think it's just about point and click, but I agree. I think what BigTime hit was very important in that people do want to see some sort of action reaction instead of just, hey, I shot and then I rotate, or, I throw a recon and then I rotate, and then there's no counterplay to that. Like, that would be, and even strategically, that would get pretty boring after the first couple of times, right? Because it's like, well, there's no counterplay. Like, we know, like, the Chamber's holding this angle unless they're dumb, like, they win this round. Like, we know how that works out. And so there needs to be some sort of counterplay, except Valorant has now trained its player base to want that reaction within the next 5 seconds instead of, let's say, 20 seconds compared to other games. And I think that's just where it is. Obviously, you can like it, not like it, but I do think overall the game has actually trained its player base and audience to want that. And so now you're going to have to deal with that in mind when it comes to balance, both in terms of gameplay, but also viewability and esports, I guess. The players will have to adapt.
100% agree, because if you want like a slower, more methodical, played out game, there's another tac shooter for that. If you want like a even slower one, I'll name drop them here. If you want that one, that was Counter-Strike. If you want an even slower, massive tactical type thing, you're looking at Rainbow Six Siege. If you want just constant action, fight, and it's not immediate death, it's Overwatch. And it's longer time to kill. You want something else, you can look at any of the battle royales as well. It's like Valorant is kind of tailoring itself now, even more so, to be its own thing, and it will continue to do it with more maps, with more agents. Still give me an atmosphere of like 60 agents, please, Riot. But it's going to tend into that play, and it's, we're not going to see hopefully we're not going to see an agent role locking where it's like you have to have two duelists and a smoke and whatever. I never want to see that. But I definitely feel like you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Will, where like the dopamine levels kind of right now for the game. I didn't even really like click with it until you said it. And I was like, you're 100% right. Duelist, immediate action, fighting barrier drops, reset, 10-15 seconds, you're getting info to do it again. It's like kind of how it is.
Yeah. And I think to call out some of the pros, a lot of these pros come from CS, and they kind of want the game to be CS because it's where they come from. And that's why I also partly think that's why we're seeing the rise of the Valorant generation and do so well, because they love Valorant for what it is and they can embrace it. And work within those boundaries. But I think it's worth saying. We're never gonna have everyone be happy. For sure. There's always going to be some level of complaint. So, you're sort of fighting a losing battle, I feel, the dev team.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's tough. And I think in a lot of ways, listen, love it or hate, I can't believe I'm saying this, but love it or hate it, I actually think Riot is pretty genius about how they do this. And a part of me wonders if it's actually intentional. But I think they do a good job of giving you patches you hate and then giving you ones you love. Because, like you said, you can't ever actually have everyone like it. So the best way to get more people to like it again is to make them hate it, because then in relativity, suddenly it doesn't feel so bad, right? So I almost hesitate to give too much credit that it's intentional, but somehow they make that cycle work. But anyway, but overall, it does sound like, I think it all just actually comes around. It's actually, I didn't even intend this, but in the sense that LEV, new generation of Valorant players, figured out their game, right, regardless of whether there was a meta or not, and then they were able to lean into it, whereas other people maybe were trying to find too much of the golden answer or whatever else it might be. Maybe they still don't have their own color for some of these teams. But before we finish talking about Masters London, now, obviously we could go on and on about LEV, I think, if we wanted, even diving deeper into their gameplay, because I think they played really well. But we have to return to the topic we had before Masters. And our previous episode, we were talking a lot about VCTCN with Yinsu. Now, I think all of us owe her an apology, right? Because we were all kind of doubting. Yeah. Well, BigTime a lot, and then me. Komodo, listen, I don't know if I can give you full credit. You were there. You were a cheerleader on the side, but you were not on the field with the Yinsu.
I wasn't on the EDG are gonna win, but I said top 3, didn't I?
Yeah, but were you participating in the fight?
No, I watched CN. Remember, this is the strongest EDG we had seen, and I still think that they were stronger than when they won. But
yeah, okay.
You get them that back then, you get them now. Both would have still lost to LEV.
Well, sure.
Now. Yeah, that doesn't matter. But good signs.
Yeah, I mean, EDG for sure. I think, it's funny because I had kind of dismissed it. I was like, I agree, they're probably better than 24, but I don't know, VCTCN. And then I saw, basically, what it was for me was that because I was so big in my belief in GE, the moment they lost to XOG, I was just like, CN just has to be better than I thought. There's no way. They just have to be. EDG's actually going to make a run.
You wanted XLG last, by the way. Last.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay. You want to talk about XOG? Listen, did they perform better than I thought? Yes. Did they eventually fall the same way I thought they would?
Yes.
Also, yes. So I don't feel as bad about that call. But
I think for me, I have to apologize because they did better than I thought they would do. But I'm still gonna be a firm realist about this. I'm not pivoting my take.
Really? For champs? You're not going to pivot your take for champs?
I think they'll do well because they have that home field advantage. EDG have by far and away the best shot. And I think you can expect top 4 from them, especially if they can... I don't know, I can't remember how it works for champs, but especially if they get a bye. The bye is massive for them. But I think when we look at XLG, for example, I think they're trolling with their Lotus. The Lotus is hard troll. I'm fed up of seeing it. It's No, they won it. They won it one time the whole tournament against Global Esports. Global Esports let them pick it and had no plan, right? That's a huge mistake from Global.
I mean,
a catastrophic mistake, and it knocked them out of the tournament. And then they kept picking it, and they lost it to everybody else. They lost it to, I think they griefed themselves with that game plan. For me, XLG, I love that they found their confidence. As soon as they got out of the group stage, I was like, yes. And then that game against G2 was genuinely impressive. That game against G2 was the best game they played all tournament. Now, I think G2 this tournament was kind of wild. They didn't really show up at all. But in that game, I felt like XLG massively outmaneuvered them and played great. And in that game, I was like, oh, wow, there might be something to CN here. Maybe. And then they go against EDG. Perfect draw for EDG, by the way, to get XLG to qualify the top 3. There's that could not have gone better for them. And that's, EDG, I feel like they have a 90% chance to win that matchup every time on a big stage. And they made it work. And then we saw XLG against LEV, and I think XLG kind of reverted a little bit. And then we saw EDG as soon as they played Paper Rex. Now, don't get me wrong, it was close. I felt like the individuals on EDG were frying, but they were out macroed that game. All three maps,
Yep.
they were massively out macroed, and they were just getting donated rounds, right? I know I sound like a real hater here, and I'm sorry, maybe I am a bit of a hater, but I think I didn't see the peaks enough from any CN team to go, you can win champs.
Well, look, continuing on with that though as well, I think in the Swiss stage, that second round draw was so troll, putting every region against themselves,
I mean,
because
that's
I
crazy.
think that DRG like just didn't get to play Valorant at this event, to be honest with you. Vikashu had like 0% in clutches. It's Vikashu. He's normally so good at them. He just didn't even have any of them. They did not get to play whatsoever, where it's really hard to kind of put the finger on the pulse on where you think DRG actually plays like to champs. So I think you almost need to forget about XLG and DRG at this event right now and reset our expectations for them coming in towards champs. And another highlight as well. It's like you got to remember Full Sense went 0-2 as well, right? Like
Sure.
there's a lot of these teams where it's like this event, we've got some great things for a lot of teams as well, like Paper X getting second, Lev getting the trophy at the end, really, really stepping up. But a couple of other teams that we had high hopes for just didn't even get to play it.
Yeah.
Well,
I think for me, just touching on XLG, like to be honest, I didn't feel like they played well enough to deserve to get out the group stage. I really don't want to be that guy, but for me, it was in the 1 and 2 round. It was Foot and NRG that deserved to be out there. I think they got unlucky drawing against each other, and I think both Global and XLG, no matter how you match them up, lose. I think if Foot and NRG are in different matchups, they both make it out. I think DRG, I don't even know what they were doing. No hate, but I mean, it's like they weren't even there. So I think once again, if you're a CN believer, I think your hopes are on EDG. And I will say the one thing EDG do better than anybody is they work the crowd. So in Shanghai,
Oh, hell
I
yeah.
think that will be a giga buff for them. I think EDG you can start to believe. I can see something there in EDG, but I do think they have to tighten up their macro. To be honest, I feel like when you compare it to the quality of Valorant that other teams are consistently able to produce, I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, I think I agree with that take simply because if Paper X is, and granted, Paper X was looking a lot better in that aspect this year, right, than any other year before. But if Paper X is very clearly out macroing you, like we might have a problem when it comes to macro. So I agree. I mean, they were getting by with. They played well, and in a lot of ways, because of the way that Paper X threw a couple of those rounds of that match in the upper finals, it almost felt like EDG should have won. But in reality, EDG were the ones who had way more heroics to stay in the game, like 100%. But I think the good news about EDG is that we saw that they were once again capable of those heroics, right? Whereas last year, it didn't really ever shine through. So that was refreshing to see. And I also, to put a little positive spin on it, I think Jenny definitely feels like he's now part of the team.
Yes, I was gonna say that he's the guy I wanted to shout out. To be honest, I think even at the start of that tournament, I was not sure about him. You know, we spoke on this before about how that 5th slot always seems cursed.
Yeah.
But I feel like, especially in the games they won, Jenny was pulling out massively impactful rounds. He didn't look like this young player that's trying to fit into this difficult, title winning squad, and he's the outcast. He felt very much part of it, and he was very much able to pull his weight. I think he's an exciting player. I think with more time to develop in the right systems, he can be the next big guy in CN in my mind.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that was impressive that they were able to manage that both for him and the team, and the team was also able to accept him, right? And I'm not trying to make the team sound like the bad guys, but like you just said, like when you're used to a certain way of playing and way of communicating, it's hard to bring in a new guy and then also adjust back towards him as well and meet him halfway. So that was refreshing to see. Macro is, I think, forever going to be the big question, because when we don't see a single one of these teams have a very, like even XOG didn't feel like they had really good map macro. It just felt like they had good ideas with certain comps, and then also hero plays with Happy Way and whatnot. So if not any of you have that going back to China for stage 2, you do have to question how does the rest of the scene grow to bring everyone up together towards a international again in champs. And I think that question mark remains.
You've just triggered a memory as well, because we haven't done anything throughout the course of London, and it's all here. That Breeze Paper X versus EDG,
2v5.
where they're about to win the 2v5, but also the 3-1v1s on that B side, where they just all swing one at a time.
Well, yeah, no, yeah,
trying to
that's
win
around.
the map, and then they lose in overtime because it's 12-9 curse, and that one, like, zen.
I mean, the worst part of it was Devi was the first one to swing the 1v1, and he even talked about it on the desk afterwards, where he's like, well, I rarely throw, so, I get one. And I was like, no, you don't.
No,
that's not how this works.
I always have a joke whenever I play Valorant with my friends, where if we're in like a 3v1 or even like a 4v2, I'll just run in and try and take a fight because it's ranked. I'm just running down. I'll just take that fight, and then I'm like, hey, I left you guys still. I'll die, and I go, you guys are still in an advantage. You guys throw this, that's on you, man. We have one freebie here. I'm gonna take the freebie. You guys figure it out, and that's what you took his freebie and just didn't hit it.
No. I get triggered at that because I think this is like my most said saying in all of Valorant, casting, analyzing, and everything, and it's the specific number. You do not win a 1 versus 3. You lose a 3 versus 1. It is my most said saying ever. To the point where someone says, "Say the line," that's the line I say.
Yeah.
And it just happens so often.
I mean,
And
it was...
I don't know what it is.
It was also just... I mean, obviously, you can pick anyone on that EDG squad, but to me, the fact that it was Smoggy, like, the guy who used to be known just for aim on that squad, and then you're swinging these one... Like, what baffled... It just... For me, it triggered an even older memory of how Paper X used to actually giga respect someone like Scary, right? There's that famous clip where Devi's like screaming, like, it's scary, don't push him, yeah, like, don't hunt him down. And like they used to know, and then here they're just like, all right, let's do it, boys.
Well, even Kang's ace that he got on Breeze, that was, I mean, he hit some shots. He played that
those
well.
were nice, yeah.
But you can't help but feel like you're just going, guys, come on, just can we sync up, please? But
Yeah,
well, there was almost another one, right, where it got down to the 1 versus 1, and it might have been Devi on the A site where the spike was planted, and it was like going to be an ace or something.
Oh yeah,
and then
yeah.
It did get denied, and the defuse just came through or something. There was that one too. I mean, there was a lot of moments of. There was a lot of individual flashy moments on a lot of series in this tournament.
Yeah.
Like, it was
For
nuts.
sure.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for EDG is they certainly can hang mechanically with anyone in the world. Of that, I have no doubt, and that always puts them in good stead. I think if they can improve their kind of game planning, macro, outside of just that raw capability that they have by 10-15%, then they start to becoming real contenders, like insanely regular contenders. But 10% is a huge number. It's going to take them time, and it's going to take a lot of work. They by far have the most potential to do it. I think they can be scary. The problem for me is when you look below EDG with the CN region. I feel like XLG, yes, they got top 6, but a lot of things went their way in my mind for them to get top 6. I think it was a nice top 6 for them. And then you look at DRG, which are the third best team in China, and they kind of always have been. They keep qualifying for events, and then this keeps happening, and that just makes me go, well, what's going on below DRG in CN?
So China.
It makes it hard. It makes it hard to watch when that's what I'm seeing of them. So I think they have a chance, but the chance is firmly on EDG's shoulders for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think probably the best way to put it is it's still EDG, but EDG is exciting again, right? They're an exciting team to look forward to again. And I think something that we kind of hinted at, but we didn't really highlight is while the macro still needs work, I do think this also came together because the teamwork came back, right? The kind of the trading and whatnot. So that's how they were able to kind of emphasize their mechanics. So good for them. But XLG, I mean, listen, I think if you're an XLG fan, the biggest thing you can hope for is the fact that they got a taste of that confidence internationally. Yeah. So hopefully they can say, hey, it fell off, but now we know. Like, now we know we can do it. So let's go back home and let's work on it throughout stage 2.
I gotta say, I was rooting for Raga, man. After hearing this guy talking, I was like, please give this man a crumb of a win. Let him have a tiny bit of self-belief because he played much better after they beat DRG. He felt like they can win a game. He's a good player. He really is. It's not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's easy to talk down, but they would batter 95, probably 99% of people who've ever touched this game. They're still very, very good at what they do. So the sort of the slander should be taken with a pinch of salt. But I was really wanting, especially after that G2 game, man. I was like, I would have loved for them to beat EDG. That would have gone like, that would be an insane arc of them. I would have been so happy with that. But I think in the same way, XLG was the easiest draw EDG could have ever gotten.
Yes.
And EDG was the hardest draw XLG could have ever gotten.
Yeah.
In my mind, even I think there's harder teams, but
sure.
they would have felt like they could have done it
Yes.
after that G2 game. They've lost to EDG too many times, and that was their problem, and that's what ultimately kind of ended their run, I think.
It's like for me, for XLG, if I'm to leave a closing remark for them, I want to see them go back to like normal comps just to refigure out like a bit of normalcy for them and not try to be unique and flashy for something that might fit their form and might work for them, because I feel like that's all well and good, but I think they're a team right now that would benefit, kind of from the basics to a degree.
Yeah. I hope they stop that Lotus. I'm so tired of people pretending that's good. I really think it's
I
terrible.
like that comp, man. I don't think they play it that well, but I like
agree
that
with
comp.
that. I agree with that.
I like that comp. But oh man, I don't want to talk about that now though, just because it's gonna remind me just that GE. Oh, I can't.
Yeah,
I have
that one triggered me.
so much to say about that because you played that comp, so you know what's good and bad. You lost on it, so you know how to lose on that comp, and then. Okay, but listen.
Anyway.
If we wanted, we could do a full episode because man, do I have a lot of words for Frost, and he'll take it because he knows they messed up. But
We get Frost on as a guest. Deep dive VOD review.
That's what we gotta do. That's what we gotta do. All right. Well, there we go. Obviously, we didn't dive into like every single game since we're just doing a wrap up after the event. But at the end of the day, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think LEV winning almost kind of really boosted this event even higher for a lot of people with the story and the grand final being 3-2 and whatnot. So I think contrary to some people's concerns, I think it turned out to be quite a competitive and fun event. And now we've got the full run all the way up to champs to look forward to. So there's a lot to look forward to there. But of course, as always, before we wrap up, we got to get our personal picks. Anyone that you want to shout out within the VCT scene? Obviously, I'm sure we have plenty of options this time around since we had a couple weeks during Masters London. Anybody got one lined up?
I'll go one. Mine is incredibly obvious and on
He's
the
gonna
nose,
do
but I got to shout out my brother.
Yes,
that's the number
knew it.
one. I feel like coming in with Foot, they had a lot of doubters, myself included. Man, I put them D on like so many tier lists. But honestly, fair play. I feel like they actually came out playing very good Valorant. They had a tough road out of the group stage, and top 6 is amazing for them. I'm so happy for my brother and all that team. I think SOP will be incredibly exciting to watch for many years to come. And that's a team I would, mostly for the story, I would love to see go to Shanghai. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, get them armed bodyguards, but get them to Shanghai. That's what I want to see. So I think that has to be my shout out, man. I was so impressed by them. I thought they played great Valorant and under always not the easiest circumstances.
All right, Komodo.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's so many kind of shout outs to give into this one, I think. Like, it's, Paper X for your mass consistency still, even though it's not a trophy. Like, keep on, like, they're still doing things. They're still going to keep getting fans. They still got to learn. But it's like, we all said it. If this is their event to win, but if they lose it, that just means they're going to win champs, right? It's their time. We'll take the Masters loss. We'll get the champs. So it's shout out to them. It's shout out to everyone on LEV. I know I said it a little bit earlier on, but what they've been able to achieve in such short time is absolutely bloody phenomenal. Shout out to like the observers actually as well, what they were doing, Jack and Co, because I was just like, the observing this event was pretty damn good. The cinematics that they're getting, the video, even the prod team, like there's just so many amount of people that could be thrown out for this one. I don't know if I've got like specific. There's just so many.
One of these days,
many.
I'm going to give my personal pick to Komodo the week that he finally picks only one person to give the personal pick to. It's always a list with you.
Bro,
it's always a list.
We got to get a teleprompter for Komodo.
There we go.
I've got one.
Me and you pick one between us and just give it to him.
The teleprompter. You're on the
man.
teleprompter, Morgan, right now.
All right. I think for me, it's a bit of an easy one, but I want to give a shout out to Fernando Diaz, the CEO of Leviatan,
Oh.
because
When he was 1 round away.
He's
Yeah.
crazy, that guy.
Yeah.
No, dude, I saw him when he was in Champ Soul, right? And obviously that they had a tough way out in the top 3 that time. And the energy, it's like, I mean, yeah, it's, sure, you could argue, well, maybe it's just for show, but you can kind of tell when the emotion and energy is
Yeah.
there. And when he's the one that's, because the thing is during that match against Heretics and during that weekend, Heretics just had so much more support around, like, rallying the fans. Like, they had more family and friends. They had everything lined up, and Leviatan almost really felt like it was just him trying to rally the crowd to cheer for them. And obviously, back then they had Osmos and they still had a lot of fans, but he was trying to really get it organized. And just seeing him put everything on the line, like, below the stage. And I was like, okay, this guy, like, really wants it for his team.
Yeah.
And then now
Yeah,
seeing him being able to, see it come to fruition, congratulate the players and celebrate with them, I think surely the players feel that energy as well. And, I hope they were able to all share that emotion. So very, very happy for him, but also just a big shout out to him for, I mean, I guess in a way, believing in the team and putting it together.
Just to add on to that really quick, when I was there watching the Lev versus Vitality game, it was him and this Lev fan group right at the side of the stage next to Leviathan. They're doing, like, the football chants, they're bouncing around, and I could see this guy's face. This guy had so much genuine emotion. He was so, it felt so real, and I wanted Vitality to win that game, but over the course of the game, I came around to wanting Lev to win, because they had such a dedicated group of fans that you can tell loved Valorant, loved the team that was in front of them, and they were giving everything for it, and him included. So it was really cool to see, really special.
Yeah, so for sure. So I'm very happy for him and the team. But like you guys said, I mean, we could shout out so many different people, even on the teams that maybe didn't even make it that far, right? There were a lot of people to recognize this master. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. One thing I just want to say is I hope people can cherish the good parts that you enjoyed of the event, and just let the not so good parts just filter it out. We don't have to get hung up on it too much. Like, I'm gonna call out GE as much as I can, but outside of that, you don't have to get hung up on it too much. And hopefully you can now just look forward to stage 2. I think the schedules just came out as well, so we kind of know exactly what to look forward to. And then already we're seeing teasers come out for 2027, and there's a lot lined up. So I hope that everyone's getting excited for that. But that's going to be it for this week. We will continue to return from here on out as we build up towards Stage 2 in VCT Pacific. So hope you guys all stay tuned. Of course, if you're just watching on and listening on YouTube, remember that we are on Spotify as well. So go check that out if you'd like to listen to us on a drive or a commute or anything like that. That's going to be it. We'll see you all next time.